This is Mr. Singleton, one of the Associate Directors for Outward Academy, and this lesson is all about something called active transport. Now please, if you haven't done the lesson on diffusion and you haven't done the lesson on osmosis, please look through those because they are really important and they kind of feed into this one. So this is the specification. Again, you can look at this on AQA, so if you just go to Google and put in AQA, let's say combined science specification, it tells you everything you need to know for your exam. And lots of the questions they will pull from this specification, and the answers are kind of in there as well. So you do need to know what active transport is, and that's what this lesson is about. Where active transport happens in both plants and in animals. Okay, and we've talked about diffusion and osmosis before and the differences between those, but we will actually just recap those as well in this lesson. So we talked about diffusion. I want you to look at this and tell me what the definition of diffusion is. I've put some pictures in there just to help you out, so please have a look. I will give you 30 seconds. You can either do this in the back of your books or on a whiteboard. I don't mind either. Okay, so the definition of diffusion is the random movement of particles from a high concentration to a low concentration. So it's the spreading out of those particles where there's lots of them to where there's not as many. Title for today is active transport. Can you make sure you underline it? If you are doing this in your book, then make sure you put the date in. If you are doing this as a revision card, then put biology paper 1 on there so you know which exam it's for. Active transport, so your title, I'll give you 30 seconds. So our challenge today is to describe the process of active transport, and our aspire is explain why active transport is so important for plants and for animals. A quick recap then, we've talked about diffusion at the beginning of this lesson. It's just the spreading out of particles from a high concentration to a low concentration. Some examples of this, it's oxygen diffusion from the lungs, from the alveoli into the bloodstream. There's that high concentration in the lungs, low concentration in the blood, so it can then move across. In plants, it also happens in the stomata of the plant. That's just in the leaf. There's little holes at the bottom of the leaf, Oxygen will diffuse out of the plant where there's lots of oxygen because it's made as photosynthesis to a lower concentration. Osmosis, we talked about basically last lesson. That's the movement of water particles, that's 1 mark in the exam, across a partially permeable membrane, for example a cell membrane, that's 2 marks in the exam, from a dilute area to a concentrated area, or where there is a high concentration of water to a low concentration of water. So active transfer, both of these go from like a high concentration to a low concentration, and it just happens. So active transport is a little bit different to both of these. Both diffusion, like I've just said, both diffusion and osmosis do go from a high to a low area. So I just want you to have a think about active transport. Why might it be a little bit different? And why do you think it's called active? Now, in the exam, it kind of helps you here because it says the word active in there, and that's got to trigger something in you. If you are active, what do you need, or what do you have lots of? And that will lead you along the right way. I'll just give you 30 seconds to have a think about it. Okay, look. So active transport, it moves it the other way. So it doesn't go from a high concentration to a low concentration. Actually, it goes from a low concentration and into a high concentration. So it goes, what we say it goes against the concentration gradient. It doesn't go the normal way. And this needs energy. The active bit, it's got to trigger that idea in your mind in the exam. If it says active transport, it needs energy, and it gets that energy from respiration. AQA will disguise this in their exams sometimes. You know, they might talk about, why is there loads of mitochondria in this cell that needs to do active transport? Well, that's where it gets the energy from. So you have to carry out respiration. So this is what it would look like. We've looked at these before in the previous lesson on osmosis. This is what it would look like. So it actually goes from where there's not very many and into a high concentration. And because it's going against concentration gradient, it needs energy from respiration. So think about it a little bit like this. Let's say you're walking down the street and you've got loads of money in your pocket, okay, and you find a fiver, okay, you have to go and pick, you want it, you're still going to pick it up, aren't you? So you would then need the energy to go down and bend and pick that up. That's the active bit. And you are putting it from where there's not very much money into your pocket where there's loads of money, okay? So that's how it works. So I want you to go and do the Google quiz. I'll give you 3 minutes to answer those questions about active transport. Off you go. Okay, you've got 1 more minute. Okay, if you need any more time, just pause the video. It's fine. So we've described the process of active transport. Now we need to explain why it's so important for plants and animals. So there's 2 that they really want you to know about, okay? And one's root hair cells. We've talked about them in the previous lesson, absorbing minerals, and the other one is absorbing nutrients from like the small intestine and into the bloodstream. So first one, we'll talk about the plant. So if you think about it, the plant wants as many minerals as possible, okay? Now, water will move into the plant by osmosis, so that's fine in the roots. But also what the roots do is they carry or they take in minerals. Now, if the plant has loads of minerals, it's quite greedy. It still wants more minerals. So it's got lots of it inside. It's got high concentration inside that cell. Got a low concentration in the soil, it's still going to pull in some of that minerals. So it uses active transport. Okay, so what you need to be aware on this is that therefore, because it's going to carry out active transport in that root hair cell has to have lots of mitochondria. Okay, so the root hair cell have loads of mitochondria, so then it can carry out active transport and pull in minerals. I remember an exam question a while back that threw lots of people. It talked about overwatering plants. Now, if you overwater plants, they actually die. So if you put too much water in, they will die. And that's because what happens is, instead of allowing some air holes or some oxygen holes in that soil, it all gets filled up with water. If there's no oxygen holes, the root won't take in any oxygen. Therefore, then it can't respire, and therefore then it can't carry out active transport and take in more minerals. Okay, so just be aware of that type of application that you need as well. I think it was a triple biology paper. In a human, so when you get into the gut, when it's all been digested, when we get into the small intestine, well, you want, or your body wants anyway, as much glucose from your food as possible and as much amino acids that are products from digestion of starch for glucose and proteins, which is amino acids. So there might be loads and loads in that blood, but your body will want more. So it will carry out active transport and it will go from the low concentration in the gut, and it will move into the bloodstream where there's still lots of it. Now, an interesting one about glucose, actually. Glucose starts off diffusing in because, there's a high concentration in that small intestine, low concentration in the blood, so it can just move across. But actually, by the end of it, if there's lots of glucose, it will still keep pulling it in, and that's through active transport. So glucose will diffuse in, and it will also be carried out by active transport as well. So they're the 2 which is really, really important. Okay, if we can't get minerals into a plant, it can't grow. If we can't get glucose into the body, we die because we need glucose for respiration. And if we don't get amino acids, we can't make proteins. Proteins make up loads of stuff. I've talked to you about proteins previously, enzymes, hormones, all of those things. So here is an exam question about active transport. I just want you to have a think about this. This is a 4-mark question. So really on this one, in terms of this, you need 4 points. So plant roots obtain some of their mineral salts from the soil by active transport, what is involved in active transport. 4 things. I'll give you 2 minutes to have a think about it and jot some ideas down, either in your book or on your whiteboard. Off you go. Okay, so these are the things that you should be thinking about. So they moved across the cell membrane. You've got against the concentration gradient, 1 mark if you just talk about against concentration gradient, or you can go from a low concentration into a high concentration, that's fine. Okay, you talk about energies being needed and respiration. It gets that energy from respiration, and oxygen is required. So those 4 bits at the bottom are probably where you're going to get most of the marks. Okay, so Google quiz just to go through that aspire of explaining why active transport is so important and some of the reasons. I'll give you 3 minutes. If you need more time, obviously pause it. Okay, you got another 30 seconds. If you need to pause it, please do. So that should be the challenge done, which was early part of the lesson, describing the process of active transport, and the aspire done, as long as you manage those Google questions, okay. So explain why active transport is important for plants and animals. Now this might just be a better way of doing your revision cards, or just noting some stuff down. There's a Venn diagram. So this is where you would show the similarities, which would be the crossovers, and the differences between osmosis, diffusion, and active transport. So if you haven't got those, draw them 3 circles. Now, if this is too confusing for you, don't do it this way. But it's just an extra way of thinking about how to revise and have those things down for you. So think of all the differences and all the commonalities. I'll help you with one. So osmosis, its difference is it only uses water, but a similarity between diffusion and osmosis is that it goes from a high concentration to a low concentration. So have a go. I'll give you a minute to see if you can see how well you get on, and we'll go through the answers, what you could have put in there. Okay, let's have a look. So these are the things you've got to put in. So diffusion is about how oxygen gets into a leaf. That's just different. Osmosis, like I said before, only involves water, and it helps keep the plant cells turgid. That means really strong. Active transport is big differences. It requires energy, and it's how we get minerals into the plant hair cells, or root hair cells, sorry. And it's against a concentration gradient, or you might have put from a, I have to always think about this when I'm saying it, from a low concentration into a high concentration. Both osmosis and diffusion are what we call passive, which means they don't require energy. And they both go from a high concentration to a low concentration. Osmosis and active transport both need a partially permeable membrane. All of them are movement of particles and occur in nature. We're clutching at straws there a little bit. And diffusion and active transport involves the transportation of solutes. I've talked about how glucose gets into the bloodstream as well in humans, possibly. Okay. If you just want to do a normal revision card, then I've done this for you as well. So if you just want a revision card on active transport, again, please remember, put biology paper 1 at the top of your revision card so you know which ones you're revising for. There is a small possibility this could be asked in paper 2s, but it's more likely to happen in paper 1. So active transport is the movement of substances from a low concentration and into a high concentration, and it needs energy. So that's usually a 2-mark question. What is active transport? That's all you need to put, okay? It needs energy, and it goes from a low concentration into a high concentration. Just a key note here that because if it needs to do this, then those areas generally have lots of mitochondria, so it can release that energy that it needs. Okay, side note on that. That means that a cell needs lots of oxygen and glucose to it. 2 areas that use active transport, so the roots move minerals from the soil into the plant, and the small intestine is glucose and amino acids into the bloodstream. I'll give you another couple of minutes if you need it to write those down. If you need to pause it, then please do. Okay, I'm going to change it, so if you need to still write stuff, just pause the video. That is the end of the lesson. Well done, guys. There are some exam questions for you to try about active transport. Please give them a go. Either print them out and then put them into your book and hand them to your teacher next time you see them, or have a go online and then print it out, or just write the answers in your book and then pass it on to your teacher. All right, well done. Keep it up.